My sincere appreciation for letting me speak to you and connect to you all, the indigenous people of the Namaqualand. My name is Yukiyo Kawano. I'm a member of the Hiroshima Alliance for Nuclear Weapons Abolition. We are a Hiroshima local group led by Haruko Moritaki, a daughter of late Ichiro Moritaki, who lived through the atomic atrocity. He has led the Japanese anti-nuclear movement since 1955. Through his life work, he urged us, the descendant, not to look away and remember the suffering. And remember the mushroom cloud rising from the atomic explosion, the horrific accumulation of the irradiated city. It was the ash of 100,000 people, including our parents and grandparents. Today, Haruko Moritaki, now 86 years old, continues her father's footsteps, fighting to appeal to the world about the inhumanity of nuclear weapons. We fear that Japan is taking a wrong path, with regional conflict on the rise and the government making decisions to protect the interest of the United States over their own citizens. To tell you a bit of my story, I will start in 1937. It is the year of Nanjing massacre. My grandfather was deployed to China, and in 1942 he was deployed to the Malay Peninsula. He came back to Hiroshima in late 1944, and August 6, 1945, he was in the basement of Chugoku Electric Company that stood 680 meters from the detonation center. He was one of a few survivors who made out from that proximity of the atomic manslaughter. He was injured and had suffered severe radiation sickness for several months. I know he suffered from constant pain from where he was hit by the atomic blast for the rest of his life. But he suffered more from carrying Japanese violent history inside him. He was a quiet grandfather with deep scars of broken glass pieces on his back. My mother was a second-generation hibakusha. As for so many second generations, she suffered from poor health. I grew up in an environment where I worry about her. I learned to stay very quiet in those mornings when my mother started having severe migraines. She died of cancer, as well as my grandfather, my grandmother, and my uncle, my mother's brother. This year, on August 6th, we commemorate the 79th anniversary of the nuclear atrocities. And we are finding ourselves at the juncture to collectively understand this particular history. The fact that after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the United States escalates its nuclear path, seen by Marshallese, the nuclear atrocities they suffered and still suffering since the beginning of nuclear testing on July 1st, 1946, shows how the nuclear power state intentionally tested the new weapons on human beings. In a note from the Roosevelt-Churchill meeting on September 20th, 1944, we see their decision of using the atomic weapons on Japanese and not on German. And to look into those first atomic bombs' implication on today's climate change resolution and nuclear waste, we need to educate the world with the history of how and why the Atom for Peace rhetoric was created. Here is the historical fact. In 1947, The ABCC, Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission, the research facilities where U.S. scientists checked the bodies of hibakusha while never providing treatment or aid to the sufferers who thought the American doctors would treat their irradiated, exposed bodies, were built in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These facilities collected the data based on the proximity of the bodies from the detonation center. The data became the world standard data for the radiation health study. This study, however, had not counted any health effect by internal exposure. What happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? An additional 500,000 suffer from delayed health effect, which were by large caused by intaking the radioactive materials. And this is a causation of unimaginable suffering of the indigenous people of the Namaqualand. The nuclear waste contaminates the water source of the land and causing the radioactive materials in the food and water. The ingested nuclear particles radiate the cells in the bodies for 24/7 for years, and that causes many illnesses. We are also asking people who have been misguided by the international entity, such as IAEA, and its promotion of peaceful use of atoms, to please understand that from the start, the nuclear fallout or the residual radiation measured by the U.S. occupied force in September 1945 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was largely overwritten to make it acceptable for the U.S. Congress to deploy U.S. soldiers to Japan. Meantime, they had comprehensive studies done. The studies shows how much radiation from the fallout would cause nausea, how much would cause hair loss, especially in those districts where heavy black rain fell. The U.S. Atomic Bomb Investigative Commission was assigned to prove that Hiroshima and Nagasaki's radiation level were not high. And in October 1945, investigation report stating, in quote, given the result of the measurement of residual radiation and the absence of clinical evidence of harm to humans, there is no evidence that harmful quantity of residual radiation existed after the explosion, end quote. No evidence of harm to humans in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is the culture of nuclear development from the beginning, and this reflects the nuclear policies and treaties of to date. Make no mistake, the rhetoric that nuclear industries are using for climate change resolution is a grotesque example of deception. Here I share a message from Fukushima where people suffer from nuclear power accident in 2011, which mirror the ones of atomic bomb sufferers. Once the accident occurs, residents will be left exposed, being oppressed by institutional violence of covering up the radiation effect. The health issues are institutionally suppressed and are left with deep despair and profound sadness. They are now facing another tragedy of the government releasing the wastewater that was used to cool the meltdown nuclear core of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant without any consent from the affected community. I want to end here by reading hibakusha poet Sadako Kurihara's poem. When Sadako saw the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park's inscription on a cenotaph that reads, "Rest in peace, for the mistake shall not be repeated," Sadako said the following instead: "O deceased, do not rest in peace, you must perturb and awaken the avaricious living dead. The first evil may have been a mistake, but the second is a tragedy. Faithful to the dead, we shall not forget." Thank you.